more shoreline than the whole coast of California.
Excuse me.
This place right here has more shoreline than the whole coast of California. And apparently, every summer. Hang on.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ozark Talks. This is a special series that we're doing as part of the Art of NGF podcast. So I'm here again with Lance and Taylor.
What's up, guys?
Hey everyone. So episode 2 opens right up into, well, it's called Blue Cat. Episode 2 is called Blue Cat. And we'll find out very quickly what that's referring to. But that's our theme governing this show, this particular episode. So that'll be important later. Scene opens at a hotel, and we see Marty waking up in a completely new reality. His entire old way of life is dissolved, and now he's waking up at the Lake of the Ozarks in a shitty hotel. And there's a speech going where he says a family is like a small business. So anything you guys have to say about that opener?
It's everyone's disoriented. There's a realignment of the family unit as they kind of get their sea legs in their new environment. It's strange, it's foreign, it's alien, and everyone's a little uncomfortable. So Marty has to deal with each of them, each of the family members individually, and to kind of get them back on his side.
Right. And we see that there's a big split because he actually gives them an instruction. He's saying a family's like a small business, meaning everyone's going to have to participate in running it. And he tells them, stay at the room. The first thing is he tells them, stay at the hotel room, do not leave. All our stuff's here. And meanwhile, the Langmores are haunting around the entire discussion.
Yeah, that was fun to watch for the second time through.
Yeah.
Seeing how they put that heist together and knowing who they are and where they come from and how they arranged it is brilliant.
Yeah, it was great. I didn't realize any of that they were like, it all seemed so just incidental. It was perfect.
Mm-hmm.
On the first viewing, it seems like, oh yeah, they're just leaf blowing. But obviously in the show, you have to remember everything that's included is included for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So we were seeing them haunting it. And he still, he tries to get back to a sense of normalcy. And we see a connection between the old life and the new life with the clicker, the remote control.
Oh, yeah, that's funny.
It comes up again, and he said, and I don't want to have to turn over the entire room to find the clicker. That wasn't fun.
Yeah. Yeah, as if he's talking about his sectional back at home.
Yeah. So he has a little sense of normalcy anyway, and then he says, love you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So he's still just right on top of it. So we're seeing that he, at his core, didn't change. You know what I mean? He's still on task with the mission, even though they were completely disoriented.
Mm-hmm.
So then right away, Wendy appealed to some other form of authority and says about getting a job. And he's like, no, that's not going to make any money. That's not even worth it.
Yeah, that was a good standoff they had there. And I felt like Marty, he drilled into that egg there.
Mm-hmm.
And he took all the energy, all the tension that was living there between them, all of the sense of entitlement that Wendy had around what happened when she left him to die. She left him to die. She took the money and went to hang out with that guy, right?
Yeah.
And rather than skirting that issue or walking around it or pretending that didn't happen, he confronted her with it.
And she says at first, "Get off your cross. I'm not going to have a pity party for you." And he's just looking at her. And then she says, "You're forgetting something, Gary. There's an innocent and good man."
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point is that as she's saying that, it's obvious that he's not, because what was he fucking doing with her? And he was going to leave her and basically her family to die right before he got killed. And Marty is deeply honest in this moment. And we see there's a complete parallel here between how he navigates. He's learning every moment. The way he navigates with Wendy right there, we're going to see later in this episode when he navigates with and negotiates with the Langmores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an ongoing theme.
And when he negotiates for the blue cat, he gets punched again. And he sees like, oh,
it's the same.
I can do it with this guy.
Yeah, it's the same as with the cop. When he ups the cop and then the cop ups him. It's brilliant. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, it's really good. So right there, he's deeply honest and he goes straight to business. And he's like, we are no longer husband and wife. We are now business partners. And our role is, our business is to take care of the kids. And he again takes full responsibility here. We hear him actually explain what happened. And he says, yeah, I should have seen it. I should have seen Bruce taking the money. I should have seen you cheating on me. I should have seen all this shit.
Yeah, accountability.
And he's like, you fucking left. You knew I needed that money. You knew I needed it, and you took it.
Thrown off his balcony. For what? People cheat. They have sex with people who they aren't married to. It happens. It's not unique. I was unhappy. You're not exactly blameless in this.
For this house, I want you to find one as nice as possible, but as cheap as possible. I want you to think starter home. We got $20,000 to our name. Just 20. So please do not sign anything without talking to me first. And we are not husband and wife anymore. We're just business partners, and our job's to raise those kids. But you're absolutely right that I share some blame for this. I should have caught Bruce. I was in charge of the numbers. I should have seen it coming. But my mind was elsewhere, Wendy. You know, it's Saturday night, and you're foxy boxing or your Zumba or whatever the hell it is. It costs me a few $100s every single month. It ended 2 hours ago, and there's no Wendy. Why does she get so many texts every night? Why does she have to leave the room to make a phone call? I wonder who's fucking my wife. So that's my bad. And no, I don't forget, Gary. I don't forget how you emptied our bank accounts when you knew I needed that money, Wendy. You knew I needed it. And I doubt very, very much that you did that by yourself, that you did that in a vacuum. So my memory's crystal clear. I was there for all of it. In fact, the satisfying sound of your lover smacking the pavement is the only thing that gets me to sleep every night.
So he said, I see clearly. He remembers everything clearly. So he's saying, I'm fully present. I'm aware of what I feel. And you know what I feel? Is that the only thing that's getting me to sleep at night is the satisfying sound of your lover hitting the pavement. He got straight to the root of it.
Yeah.
And then she punches him twice.
He takes it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're seeing still an establishment of his character, the depth and power of his character. He just sits there.
Mm-hmm.
He's not forced to a reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's never forced to a reaction. He actually gets to choose.
Yeah, and then he, after that scene, he starts to explore his options on the Ozark and meet everyone that he might need to know. Like extend his hand and be seen where he is by the people that he may need to know. He's finding the others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great. He's going out and actually, meeting his reality, facing it, and communicating with the actual people there.
Because how do you know unless you do that? That's how you handle any foray into any new interest or environment. Mm-hmm. Find out who's there, meet them, better or worse.
Right. So we're getting instruction there. Just go out around where you are. Mm-hmm. find the opportunities that are there. And even if it doesn't go the way you think you want it to go, you still make connections and create future opportunities. And more importantly, you'll get instructions from reality, because what we see happen here. Well, next we also see Wendy go into to the realtor, and she runs the show. We see her step up for the first time here.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And that's a byproduct of that confrontation in the van.
exactly.
They're both evolving into higher forms through each scene. It's incredible writing.
Yeah, I know. So the next one, we see a little glimpse of the hotel again, with Ruth getting upset when they won't let her clean the room. So that's starting to get wavery. And then the next thing was Marty at the archives looking up all the businesses. So like you just said, he's an angel, said he's an angel investor looking for businesses that are failing.
Right.
So he gets his list. He goes to see the storage guy first, and he rents the storage. Right here, we see Marty get instructions from reality, from this guy, even though he thinks he's there to try and invest. And the guy tells him the story about the pontoon in the storage shed he rents, and he said that it was being used to smuggle crystal meth across the lake. But the guys didn't have a fishing pole, no coolers, no ice, no nothing, no food for cover. And he said, "Let that be a lesson to you." And Marty's like,
yeah. So good.
So he gets the instructions right there. Then we see Wendy touring a bunch of shitty houses and Marty getting turned down. So they're facing defeat immediately, facing an uphill battle. We see Charlotte refuse the Bible, which was pretty interesting.
That is interesting. That's a nice touch. I glossed over that.
Yeah, I wonder what they might be aiming at there, but it's kind of like, no, we're already dealing with this, you know. Refuses it from Wyatt, and then he tries to get her away from the room, which I also didn't pick up on at all the first time. I was totally clueless. Then we see the strip club. Marty goes to the strip club next, and that's when he's trying to one-up the Bobby Dean guy, and then Bobby Dean calls him out on the money laundering. So
totally.
Kind of like defeated.
But Marty's great, right? He goes away, and he like, not on this episode, but he's going to regroup, and then he's going to go and one up Bobby Dean. Like he comes up with the creative solution to re-engage with these people and get the upper hand.
He learned what he needed to know at that to take that meeting.
Yeah.
Then we meet Buddy at the house that they're going to rent. So that's a key player for later on.
I have terminal heart disease, man.
And we see how direct Buddy is, which I think is also good. He's like a trainer for everyone there. He's like the old guy training Rocky, but for Transcendence. You know, he's teaching about death, and he's death living there at their house, basically. And then we see Marty. So we meet Buddy, who's dying. He's essentially death. So we see the death theme enter in right away with Buddy. Then we see Marty eating lunch at the lake, and he climbs down and tosses his sandwich off the edge. So he's kind of foreshadowing the suicide idea. Yeah. And
he's I think he's also making an offering too to the Ozark. It arises again in his dream. The relationship that he has with that water and that cliff is going deep inside.
Yeah. So next we see the boating scene, and Jonah goes out and takes his laptop with him. Then they find out Buddy's coming. Buddy comes with the house. So the kids are going out adventuring, which I think is also important. They're going exploring and getting used to where they are. Buddy says, "I believe in being direct." So he's good. Then there's a montage, and the only song that we hear on the whole episode is that song "Dear Love of Mine" by Daniel Spelaniak, I think his name is, which is a really cool song. Dear Love of Mine. So I think we're seeing the loves of Marty's life out exploring, and then we see Charlotte get busted by the cops. And Jonah meets Tuck, which is a key moment as well. So Jonah had to leave for the story to advance. The kids had to go exploring. So then we get to the scene with the sheriff. Lance, I know you had some things about that.
Nothing more than nothing more than I said. What do you remember from it?
Well, we see something important with Wendy there too. What happens there? Marty reads the sheriff, and first the sheriff's trying to prosecute Charlotte, and then Marty reads the situation, and he's like, "Oh, okay, we're playing a guessing game. Why don't I try?" And during that time, Wendy is all timid. She's like, "No, Marty, calm down. Like, it's the police. You can't talk to him this way," basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Marty just one-ups him, and then when the sheriff pushes back and says that he serves the tax-paying citizens, then Wendy suddenly snaps and says she just bought the house and one-ups the sheriff, and the sheriff has to prosecute the Langmores.
Is Wendy suggesting that they're going to be citizens there and they're going to raise a fuss about the sheriff? And
yeah, that they're voters and that they're taxpayers and they're going to be citizens, so that he might want them on his side.
All right.
So we see them digging in that scene too, and learning the lay of the land. Really.
Yeah, that was great too, because in that scene, as soon as the cop mentions Ruth Waymore or whatever their
Langmore.
name, Langmore, you see immediately Marty's eyes are like, "Oh shit!" He knows what happened.
He's like, "Yeah, Ruth, B&E expert as a criminal.
Yeah.
Your potential is vastly untapped."
Yeah. I think Marty might have been thinking of it in two ways. He might have thinking, like, that's a useful ally, and she might have just robbed me as well.
Yeah.
Like,
and he also hears where they live. He finds out where they live, and then he asks for to see a picture of Ruth, and he's like, "Oh fuck." And then he gets home. Who cleaned up in here? And the kid Jonah tries to blow him off. Says he cleaned up, and he's like, "Well, where'd you get that knife?" He's like, "Oh, I took a short walk." But obviously during the montage, we saw like a very long walk. And at first seems like the money's there, but then we see him realize that the huge chunk of it is missing. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's funny is about this scene, he already has received all the tools and instructions he needs for the next step. And he calls the sheriff, the guy who was his adversary, and the sheriff gives him the information he needs. And then it turns out that Charlotte, because of what happened with her, knows where they were going. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what we see was perceived wrongness, like, oh, this shouldn't happen. The kid should have just stayed there and protected the money. But in actuality, it's the way forward in the story.
Yeah, because he develops the relationship with the Langmores and Ruth
and his own kids. Everyone comes together.
And his own kids, everyone, yeah.
So he goes and buys fishing gear,
yeah,
and coolers, and rents a boat, and brings the coolers for cash as well. Then one of the best scenes, my favorite scene in the episode, and one of the best in the show, is him confronting the Langmores in the bathroom.
Totally.
About the money.
Oh, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
No. Okay.
Taylor, jump in if you want anytime.
All right, got you.
So yeah, he says, relax. No, you're not. That's my money. He's just going to take it.
Mm-hmm. Well, he starts by nearly literally diving into the room after sitting outside for a moment. Like a deep breath and dive in and handle this.
Right. Yeah, he's excellent. And they have a gun on him right away. And the thing is, he's already had the gun on him from Dell. So we see now a new time of him confronting the same situation, and he can see through it. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, he never stops talking. He goes, relax. That's not what's going to happen right now. And then they look up the cartel, which gets the kids to leave, the younger ones. And basically, again, Marty uses the truth of the situation to win the situation.
Yeah, that's what Marty's so brilliant at, is using the variables of where he finds himself. Like you said, you took a deep breath. He had no idea what he was going to run into. And then he's willing to just freestyle it on the fly and adapt to make it work in his favor.
Yeah, and he dives right in and rises to the occasion in that scene. Big time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that whole speech, are you murderers? He's just asking them to look at the reality of what they're thinking of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we see
Yeah.
him attempt to play him a little bit. Ruth goes, okay, I'll step up here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Marty,
I'm surprised they let him get away with that.
go ahead.
I'm surprised they let him get away with that. I'm surprised they weren't just like, yeah, whatever. Let Omar come and get us.
They know where they live and that there's a balance of power. And we find out more about that later. But they know where they live and who's running the show. So they're used to having to deal with that.
Right. That's what it is.
And then Marty points out the facts again, even when Ruth is saying, yeah, let's kill him, let's do it. And then he said, who's the irresponsible one here? The one that goes out with the trashy women, drinks too much. And he basically points out, you're going to be under constant pursuit the rest of your life, and you're probably going to have to kill a family member if you want to pull this off.
Yeah, I like how the youngest one is all psyched about groceries and gas money for the rest of your life.
Right. I thought that didn't sound bad either, you know.
No, seriously.
But yeah, so they take 20,000 and they're like, we're taking 20,000, deal with it. And he's like, you deal with it. And when the boy's leaving, Marty's like, yeah, good choice. And he's like, yeah, sorry about Charlotte. And he's like, not good enough. He's just on point on every detail.
So
You deal with it. Yeah. He's just handing over the responsibility and telling them exactly what their move is doing. So then we see the cut scene with the truck crashing with the barrels of acid that have Bruce and company in them, and the jawbone. So that's the key piece that's going to keep this FBI pressure going. And we see the FBI guy working out, and he said he thinks his career is going to be made by this. So he's all stoked, and he breaks up with his partner, and he's completely heartless, basically. So we're established in we're establishing there that he's a heartless bastard, basically.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, those guys. How they play into it is still a mystery at this point. How the FBI plays into the whole story.
Yeah, we see how they.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't bring up anything about the future episodes either. So, but it's a good establishing shot with him. Well, we saw him in the last episode a little bit too, but in this one we see him on a personal level. And then we see Marty looking off the edge of the cliff again. And then he wakes up into his life with a sigh. You see, he's just weighed down by the burden of all this. He thinks he failed. And he does his familiarity thing again. He does his consistent effort with the kids. Who loves his little girl? And he goes over and kisses Jonah. And then he goes and wakes up Wendy to bring her outside.
Is this after he had his dream on the cliff?
Yeah. He wakes up from the dream and he goes around and does his routine. One thing that did happen at that moment when he was talking to Jonah was Jonah brought up the friend that he made who works at the Blue Cat Lodge.
Right. Yeah.
Well, because the boy said, when Marty wakes up, Jonah says, you're right, I skipped over that part. Jonah says, I'm sorry. He apologizes. So Jonah takes responsibility, which is cool. So we see that theme throughout with all the kids. And also Charlotte had taken responsibility as well and given him the information he needed to go get the money back. So both kids have helped now. And then he gets Wendy and tells her he's going to kill himself. So basically he wants to pay Del back and save the family. So it's still on point with his mission. And at that point, he now is bringing Wendy face to face with death. Wendy got confronted by it with Buddy, and now she's been brought face to face with it. And in that moment, we see Marty and Wendy reconnect more deeply than circumstances. We see their transcendent connection begin.
Yeah.
Seen some.
Yeah, they're old.
Go ahead.
Yeah, their old marriage is dying. It's a slow death here.
So in that moment, they reconnect, and Marty goes out to do the deed to kill himself, and he stops at a corner and decides to call Bob. And basically, Bob's the private investigator. Basically, Bob saves Marty's life. He can read what's going on. So we see Marty has these various contacts and friends, and he's willing to listen to what they have to say. And he's looking for percentages. He wants this to be a mathematical, at least probability that it's going to work, or it's not worth it. So even though it's this crazy decision, he's measuring it. He's still aware and present of what's going on. And what he starts to realize on that phone call is that not even death is a way out for him. His mission will fail if he does the suicide, is what he finds out. And right at the moment he decides to keep going, he looks up and sees the sign for the Blue Cat Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
He goes home and he tells Wendy, I wasn't thinking straight. And Wendy collapses. She's faced death now.
Mm-hmm.
And she had typed Marty Bird is dead on her email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the new life is about to begin.
Mm-hmm. So we see essentially cleaning up all these things, and both of them getting trained in how they're going to have to behave to rise to the task.
Yeah.
So the second,
the next, what is it? I think next Marty goes to the Blue Cat.
he goes to the Blue Cat.
Yeah, this one's great.
And he starts this negotiation with no. This kind of references Jim Camp wrote a lot of books on negotiation, and a lot of them center around that negotiations begin when you reach a no.
Mm.
And Marty obviously starts this one with a no and then has to move through it.
Well, he's really good at selling this, and he doesn't get stuck on the things that he can't sell. He just switches around to selling something that he can. He says to that woman, he basically says, yeah, I don't know anything about your business, and I don't know what can be done to improve it. What I invest in is people. And by way of doing that, he was able to keep it moving forward. Whereas he could have just gotten totally stuck on the first thing, like, yeah, I don't know anything about your business, and I don't know how to improve it. Shit.
Yeah, he took a different strategy than he did with the storage and the titty bar. With the woman and the lodge, it was definitely a different tactics he used. But it wasn't enough. He needed to get creative. And again, he seizes the moment. He sees that the opportunity is there when he's with Tuck and what's that lady's name who owns the Blue Cat?
I forget her name right now.
I can't remember her name.
But yeah, he's when the guy calls Tuck a retard.
Yeah.
It recalls the conversation from episode 1 when one of the kids says the word retard, and Marty says, "Don't say that word ever," to the kids. And so then he brings up, that story from his life right in that situation.
Oh yeah.
And he uses the codes. He uses the codes that trigger a robotic reaction from people. And he sees that those are so deep that he can control entire situations if he just stays aware of them and enters the codes correctly. So he provokes that situation and he waits. You watch him time it exactly. He sees her walking up and then he just sits there and he's building up to it. And right when she walks in, he turns and he says, "No, I'm not going to stand for it."
Mm-hmm.
And the way she's looking at him is so funny. Like she knows what he's doing, but can't resist.
Yeah, and he gets smoked again. He gets punched or slapped for the second time, and he's waiting for it.
Right. This time it's like he learned from the situation with Wendy what he had to do here.
Mm-hmm.
So we see him basically all these situations that he finds himself in, he's received instructions for previously. By being present in his life, he's able to actually flow with each new situation.
Mm-hmm.
And each new situation has locks in it that all the previous situations give you the keys for.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Yeah.
that's part of the magic of the show. What is depicting their reality. Somehow they fucking nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he doesn't take himself out on other people. He catches scenes running. It's that's something that most good TV shows and movies do, is they'll start a scene running as it's going and then leave it early, so it feels like there's a sense of motion in the scene.
Yeah.
But it's the same as in life. You don't need to go in and impose yourself and your ideas and your expectations on people or the room or wherever you are. You can catch the scene running, observe what is occurring, and then use your imagination to play in it.
Yeah.
And then leave early.
Yeah, so we see we see the first big win right at the end of the episode. So we had to clean up all that mess. Kids had to dig in and explore. And Marty had to accept that he's going to have to get help from everybody, basically, to make this happen and use everything that he's got. And at the very end, we see them move into a house. So we see them establishing a new stability. And Death lives in the house with them. How beautiful is that? Death stays as a presence. I mean, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a master stroke right there. I never realized what
Yeah.
presented until then.
Yeah, because with Death, I just think in my home or on my person, carrying reminders of death. And because without it, I become death. Like whoever's not aware of death becomes death.
And the final moment is Wendy telling the kids what's actually going on. So it's the end of Innocence. They've just found out that Santa Claus doesn't exist and that their dad launders money for a horrific cartel.
Yeah, awesome episode.
Yeah, it was funny. I thought for a little while at the beginning of it, I was like, "Oh, this one isn't as good as I remember," and then kicked right in, and I saw so many patterns in there, and they just nailed it, completely nailed it. There's just the right amount of crescendo.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like waves on the lake, the way they deliver stuff.
Yeah.
The death confrontations are excellent. It's unparalleled, really.
Yeah.
And the way that Marty and Wendy act that scene when he's telling her that he's going to kill himself, and they just put their foreheads together. And it's not that they want to come together; it's that they can't not. They realize who and what they are is so much deeper than all the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is life.
Yeah. So how can people, how should a person watch this show to actually get something out of it? How the hell do they translate what we're talking about into real life experience?
That's a good question. It depends on the individual. You may want to listen to this before you watch it, or you may want to watch it, listen to this, and then watch it again. And it's probably worth that as well.
Yeah,
Depends
you
how
need
big
to
of a
watch it
fan
all.
you are of the show.
Yeah, you need to watch it all at least twice. Though there's no way that
Yeah.
it can cross in one viewing. It's not even meant for that. I don't think. The fact that they put it on Netflix in a pack of episodes at once, I think even indicates that it's meant to be watched multiple times.
You know what's funny? I read, silly of me, but I read a critic of the show, and they were saying that the show needed another 6 months to season before they went into production because the show is for some reason underdeveloped. And it's just a classic case of a critic missing the point of the show and what makes it organic and alive and living.
Yeah.
And less like CSI or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you had mentioned there was an article about an interview with Jason Bateman about having to talk himself into directing and acting in it.
Yeah. It always been a dream of his to have a show. I watched an interview from 2005 or 2004, maybe. It's just around the start of that Arrested Development, where he says his dream is to direct and act in his own show. And he likes shows that are not that big, shows that are on mid-scale, but they aren't making many of those anymore, and so on and so on. And you can see he's talking about what is happening with the Ozark, which is just incredible. And then another interview, he talks about him being brought in as the actor and then sitting down with the producers and convincing them that he should direct it and act it. So imagine that conversation. Like, you serious, Bateman? But hey,
sounds like he pulled off a Marty Bird right there.
He pulled off a Marty Bird, and that's the thing about good casting too, is that because Bateman clearly has a lot of Marty Bird in him.
Yeah. And oh man, he seems like quite a character. We did a little research on him, and he switched over to his own company to represent himself instead of using an agency. And it looks like they make some interesting stuff, some advertising products and different things. But that's great how the show came to be. I'm interested in looking. We'll get more into that over time as we go through the rest of the episodes. But what a lot of fun. What a great character. And I have no idea what it would be like to direct that as well as star in it, but it sure works. And I think that you're right. The casting, I'd like to look more into how that came to be as well, and how much he had an influence on it, because they got everybody really right into their roles. I mean, there's no stilted acting. I'm never removed from the story by any of the performances. They're all really smooth, really dialed in, and I think there's some sense of presence. Everybody's having a lot of fun with that script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which speaks to the director in particular, and the entire production crew for creating a space where you can create that kind of work, especially for 10 episodes, just 10 hours. And they're doing it in the amount of time that they make feature films. And it's a miracle if you get an hour and a half of feature film that has that kind of aliveness and presence. So doing it for 10 hours straight, acting and directing in it, well, wow.
Yeah, I wonder, they may have done all of the recording for that in a short amount of time. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that they all stick together, and they had different locations, but I bet you they did it in big chunks, because there's really a flow. There's a continuity between the characters, and they're relating to each other. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the locations are wonderful. The buildings and the spots, the shots on the lake, the house, all the locations are really nice too.
Yeah.
Nothing overdone, but everything really perfect. Everything perfect. All right. Well, that's enough for now on episode 2. But come back and check with us again next week, and we'll dive into episode 3 and enjoy the show. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to say, Taylor, before we head
No.
out? All right.
I think we wrapped it up.
Cool. All right. Thanks for being here, Lance.
All right, man.
And I'd love to not have to turn the room upside down to find the clicker. That wasn't fun. Love you both.